organized on metaverse and AI. It was very interesting. And she is a powerful force. She has been a pioneer in the space. There are a lot of women of color in at high levels of leadership, right? We need to see more women represented and leading the way, because then it also inspires others as well. So what I would love for you to do is, as we get started, if you could both just do a brief introduction about where you're at, what you're working on, and then I will follow up with I have a few questions I'm very curious to ask you. And then this is 30 minutes. After that, we'll roll into a 100 list announcement. Sound good? Great.
Sounds great.
So who wants to go first?
Go
Make
for
your
it.
toss first.
Yeah, I'll do it.
Go
Yeah.
for it.
My name's Alex Hanna. I'm Director of Research at the Distributed AI Research Institute. DARE is a nonprofit research institute focused on community-based uses of AI, doing two things, having two pillars, kind of focusing on calling out all the crap that's out there, and which there's a lot, right? And also turning and thinking about imagining new futures for AI. I spend a lot of time as director of research working with all our researchers who come from an amazing variety of backgrounds, right? So we have people that are machine learning researchers based in the African continent, people working on machine translation tools for languages that don't get represented, like Amharic and Tigrinya, with people who are doing computer vision development, or things like detecting spatial apartheid in South Africa. We work with people who are experts in their own right, like workers who have worked in the fields of being Amazon delivery drivers or charter school teachers or data workers, gig workers, and giving them the tools to research what it means. We hear so much about AI development from the perspective of AI developers, people who come from 5 schools, or that you can count, mostly men, but then expanding what it means, because that lived experience is a type of expertise. And when you are the subject of AI, because we're all subjects of AI, but we are not subjects equally. When we are subjected to AI, we really need to have those people in the room. So it's not only having people in the room and advising, it's people there doing the research. So DARE, as a research institute, has our research philosophy. It's based on that. It's based on trust and time. It's based on paying people. Pay people. My God. um, live by two words. I won't say them here. And then doing things, and then focusing on what it means to imagine new features. So yeah, I'll pass it to Angie.
Excellent. Thank you, Alex. And happy 5-year anniversary.
Yes.
Really exciting. And thank you for your leadership. It's
Mhm.
awesome to be in a room just with our people. And, I'm a little bit of an introverted person, so I can get nervous before panels. But this one, I'm just not, because it's just such a important topic. It's a comfortable topic. And I think we're all here as lifelong learners. And so, Angie Cometh, I'm Dean of a School of Professional Studies, or at the School of Professional Studies at New York University, just up the street. And really, our vision is to be a global leader in applied experiential learning. And so for us, we're not stuck in theory. We are literally the experiential learning school. And so we have 38 degrees, and every year we add another degree, because there's things that are happening in the world that we really want to make sure that we're teaching our students about. And so our point of view, and we've been really focused, I'd say, on AI, and maybe we weren't using those words, but we've been focusing we've got 3 master's degrees in human capital management. And so for years, probably about at least the past 5-6 years, we've been focused in on analytics and human capital, and how to really think about the use of technology in learning and development, in recruitment and talent development. It's been really interesting to kind of watch that. And all of a sudden, everyone wants to talk about it. But we've been doing work with tech firms in terms of coaching and professional development for a really long time. So I'd love to speak about that. The only other thing I'd say is that, our point of view is AI is not going to kind of replace people. It's going to certainly change up jobs. And it's not that, but we do believe that kind of those people who know AI will probably have a much better shot in the labor market than people who don't know AI. And so we really just lean into teaching folks and kind of bringing clarity to the marketplace when there isn't clarity. I'd say right now there's not a ton of clarity. There's a lot of thought and hope and ambition and some experience in terms of what reskilling means. But for us, we think that making sure that there's clarity in the marketplace, helping students learn it, experience it, research it, and then use it to influence for good is kind of our mantra in terms of how we think about technology and emerging technologies. So whether it's the metaverse, whether it's VR, AR, whether it's AI, whatever it's going to be next year, we really want to make sure that our students are learning it, experiencing it, researching it, and applying and influencing with it.
That sounds great. And the reason I invited Angie here was the uniqueness of her role. She is in a leadership role, but it is not of a school which is traditional. Like, NYU has many schools, as I'm realizing, a ton, right? Her role is unique because we are talking about a non-STEM background, which is so critical because so much of this attention right now about AI has been about STEM careers and everything has to be technology. And her role, and she is leading the way in finding those opportunities that students need in finding STEM adjacent, non-STEM route. So absolutely critical to have that. And today's panel is about AI reskilling. And I want to clarify that it's not just about students, right? We are all at different pathways in our journey here. And what is amazing about the space is we don't just have students, they're mid-career women who are trying to transition back into these roles. We have to figure out those on-ramps into these spaces, no matter where you are. So I would love to also with Alex, doing a stellar job with your AI Hive theater and just, calling crap out constantly because there is so much misinformation that we are tackling on a daily basis professionally, personally. So where do we expend our energies? So that said, how about I start with you, Alex? If you can tell us about, like, for someone who's new in this space, what should they be thinking about? Like, what is some framing you would use, suggest to them? And then also let's talk about who are already in the workspace, right? These technologies are being used. Like you said, you mentioned disciplining them, surveilling them, and we talked about how the startup is using surveillance software on their own employees, the women employees, and harassing them. So can you talk to both starting your career, finding that role, and then going into these spaces and protecting yourself, especially for women?
Sure. Show of hands, how many of you here are students? Oh, okay, a lot. Oh, you're all in the back. How many of you are transitioning roles or transitioning careers? Okay, all right, I like this. How many of you are teachers? Okay, some. Okay, great. I like this. Everybody should raise your hand. You're all teachers and you're all students. Okay, so let's talk about entry into this. We think about AI very much in the view of being a place where we're thinking about very technical kind of aspects of this. I have an undergrad degree in computer science, but my PhD is in sociology. Okay. And the way I think a lot about these tools is not really from the perspective of the technology itself. It's a lot of it is about the institutions. I think everybody in this room can be someone that studies institutions by virtue of being in your institution, right? You are part of multiple intersecting institutions, whether you are a librarian, whether you are a student, whether you are someone that takes transit, whether you are a mother, whether you are a father or a non-binary parent. And so thinking about what that means that you're thinking about the ways in which your life intersects with technology. And your life doesn't intersect with technology insofar as it intersects with the kind of code of it, it intersects with the outcomes and the effects of it. And as Mia said, we think about the way in which we're coming into the workplace and we may have all this kind of surveillance on us or all this kind of data hoovering coming to us, right? We think about how we interact with this. I'm going to give a few examples. One of the fellows at Dare is Adrian Williams. Adrian is fantastic. Used to be both a charter school teacher and a Amazon delivery driver. She was a charter school teacher first, and one of the things that she noticed in being a charter school teacher is that she was coming, and many of the people that she was interacting with as a charter school teacher didn't really have educational backgrounds as teachers. They were coming from programs like Teach for America, And the charter schools themselves were very interested in getting student data. They were encouraged to collect as much student data as they could. Students would be on laptops all day, they would be typing, um, and teachers were being asked to monitor them. And sometimes teachers were being asked to monitor things like students talking about really heavy stuff, trauma at home, domestic violence, sexual violence, being really in really difficult situations. And teachers were told to impact this in the tool going wherever, we don't know where this tool is going. These tools, like Google Classroom or whatever different educational CMSs are being used. And so that's a big concern that she has now about what is happening to these data, what's happening. So when I think about AI and I think about entering this space, where do you have your life experience that you could bring into this? And I think, especially speaking to this conference, what are aspects of your life experience that are uniquely gendered and uniquely racialized and are uniquely upon kind of queer or trans experiences that come into this? What are ways that you're bringing into this and bringing into it? Because that is an expertise that Sam Altman doesn't have. That's an expertise that Ilya Sutskever doesn't have, Jeff Hinton, whatever, name all of the white dudes. And that is an experience that they are not able to access because you have this unique expertise in these institutions, and that's where you can have this kind of intervention, and that's what you're bringing into the workplace.
Here.
Yeah.
Angie, do you want to
Sure.
pick up
So-
on that?
As you were speaking, a couple of things came to mind. These might be adjacent or wild tangents. So sorry or thank you. So the first piece that I think about is, as you were speaking in the first part, hybrid kind of 1.0, or kind of something that we talk about a lot with a lot of our faculty and a lot of us, we were tackling this question of what would you tell someone starting out in your career? And so part of the conversation that we've had recently, and truly the conversation changes every week, so this was last week's conversation, but I find it to be really interesting, is that hybrid 1.0 was what? It was, what's your work from home policy? Is it 2 days, 3 days, totally at home, totally in the office? There's now a hybrid 2.0, which I think is really interesting. And I think we've kind of dealt with the work from home, just be flexible, do what works for you, do you. But what's really interesting about a hybrid 2.0 is what part of your job could be automated? What part of your job is irreplaceable? Every job has uniquely human aspects. So again, we don't believe that it's going to be kind of completely replaced, even at the entry level. But really, I think it's fascinating to think about companies. And as a young person joining a company, as a career transitioner, as a teacher, as someone who's an executive, we talk a lot in the healthcare field that a nurse has a lot of things that she or he does, or that they do. And what's often most important and what's most human is kind of the work at the top of their license. That's kind of like the technical term in healthcare. You have trained for many things, you do many tasks, but what's at the top of your license? What were you really trained for? And those are the uniquely human things. Only you can be at someone's bedside. But unfortunately for nurses, they often have a little bit of their job, 10, 15, 20% of their job that's top of the license, and the rest of the day are filled with very automatable tasks. And so what's really interesting, I think, as we think about the world of work, and for young people, what we often talk about is in hybrid 2.0, you're thinking about where you want to do your work, what type of work you want to do, what types of skills that you're going to really leverage, what you enjoy. And then you should also start thinking about what's at the top of the license for you. What's that top of skills that really are just exciting, unique, interesting. And then we have to do a lot of work kind of at the tasks that you don't need a skilled nurse to do. You could actually use AI to benefit. The other piece, Alex, as you were speaking, one doesn't often. I worked in government. I love city government. I think it's really incredibly important. Here in New York City, we have 12,000 openings in city government. It's incredible. We're the biggest employer in New York City. But there's a lot of job openings and not a lot of people are going into government. And so what I think is quite interesting is this is a unique opportunity in education, in healthcare, in a lot of kind of public and social services where we don't have enough people. There's really a hiring and worker crisis, I would argue. And there are a lot of automatable tasks in the work that we do. And so I really want to put out there that there are some really interesting opportunities and maybe innovators that we don't naturally think about that I think are all about equity. They're about good jobs. They're about really thinking about this difference between the top of your license and then other tasks. And I would really challenge educators and healthcare and social service providers, particularly governments. If they want to address their talent shortage, they should really think about embracing and integrating AI and kind of really making some investments there.
Well said, both of you. I feel like there are so many things to be concerned about with technology and the way AI hype has taken off. It's one thing, though, which I feel positive about, is really making people question, what does it mean to be human? Because you're all doing this assessment, right? What does the technology mean for me? What is automatable, and what makes me unique? What makes me me? Can a machine replace me tomorrow? And those kind of philosophical questions, and which I felt like should be incorporated in all education, right? When is the last time we actually talked about that outside of the realm of I need this job and these are the things that I need to do to get that job, and that's the check, 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 right? And I feel like maybe this is our pathway back into that humanity and makes us like get in touch with like owning who we are as humans. And the interesting thing that you mentioned is, I did want to touch on that, is about there are other skill sets that people could leverage in these roles, right? You said AI. People just latch on to that word because you said you've been doing it for a while. So if you were to think back and, okay, how has your approach changed in the sense that people bring skill sets to the table, they bring all these different expertise, lived experiences that are discounted. Are there ways that you're seeing maybe employers or you yourself are preparing students to, this is how you present yourself, this is how you make your lived experience important, like they should be validated, right? Because like otherwise it's just white dudes who walk into the room and they said, yeah, I can design this system. I have no experience, but I can design the system for women having zero lived experience. So there are some smart ways that you can ease people in, give more value to lived experience. So that's one. And then I'll just hand it over to then again to Alex, talking through like how do you take ownership back? How do you reclaim that space, right? Because we are just seceding so much space to these external entities. So how do you take that back? How do you train students to do that? How do you, somebody who wants to transition, how can they do that, re-own the career pathways or what have you? And just a fun story, how the system is so broken. I research a lot of programs out there. There's one for re-entry for women. I said, what is out there? So because there's so many women in our community who left the workspace, mothering, elder care, childcare responsibilities, came back, and there are some programs offered. So I applied for, I didn't apply, I went to one of the orientations, so I became a bit part of that list, that they have mailing list. And I got a rejection letter. And I'm thinking, I haven't even applied for this damn job. How are you rejecting me on the basis of what? So I will hand it back to both of you and have your thoughts on this.
So I can do this, and I'll be brief because I know there's kind of lovely libations out there. But the first thing is last year. So every year, NYU picks one single book for every incoming freshman to read, and we picked Clara and the Sun last year. Did folks read that? Oh my gosh, it is the best book. It's a short read. You can read it probably in about 3 or 4 hours, and it's literally about an AI friend and the power of humanity and who's a better friend, a consistent AI-driven robot or an imperfect human? And that's the teaser reel. It is a great, great book. The author won a Nobel Prize, so you don't have to take my word for it. But Clara and the Sun, it's a beautiful, haunting, incredible book that gets, in my mind, to the kind of core of ethics. And so one part of my answer is just starting to talk about it, the awareness building. We talk about, the evolution, the adaptation of AI. It's a 10, 20-year evolution that's going to happen, right? We know that the technology, I think the quote is, the technology is godlike, and our infrastructure, our systems, our way of working are medieval. And so that gap is not going to be switched. And so I think talking about it, educating, understanding would be the kind of first piece. Second piece is we can hold two things at the same time. And this is, again, when I think about ethics and when I think about kind of equity, the notion of being able to hold two truths at the same time is incredibly important. And so when I think about technology, again, let's not call it AI, we try to really understand what is it great for and what are its limitations. And we have to be able to hold those two things at the same time. And I think sometimes it gets a little, not a little, it gets a little frustrating, but it's, when we just talk about only the good things or only the doomsday things. And we have to really learn around any of the technologies to hold those two truths and to really explore. And I think we'll sharpen up what it's great for by totally understanding what it's limited, what its limitations are, and vice versa. And I think that that's just not a level of inquiry that happens all the time. Again, I have a real privilege to be in an academic institution where we get to talk and think a lot. We do a lot, but we do get to talk and think a lot about these kind of concepts. And so that's what we really try to do with our students. And by creating that openness, creating that kind of moment for possibility and for inquiry, we had students come to us a couple of months ago, I guess, and said, we would love to learn about AI. We would love to just host a really big summit. It happened yesterday, understanding the impacts of AI in marketing and education and healthcare and project management and all the areas that we train in. We're like, great, do it. Really, really important. And so being able to kind of foster that. So if you're in a company, being able to really have that design session to say, what do we think as a group, whether it's in a job role or a job title or at a particular level or in a unit, let's really tackle this and bring the training into our day-to-day job. Where do we think it's interesting? Where do we think it's limiting? What do you want to try? Let's prototype and kind of pilot something quickly, easily, cheaply. And so those are the types of things that we do in our context. But again, I'd say we're all students and we're all teachers, and any company can do this if you really just engage with it. But the notion of sending people to training to learn about AI, we never love that. Bringing it into your job and thinking about it in a really applied way is quite important. So those are some of the things, Mia, that come to mind in terms of our approach and what we would think about it, regardless of what seat you sit in. If you're in a management or a leadership seat, if you're in a student seat, I think that inquiry is incredibly important. It can happen in lots of ways, from reading a book to kind of engaging and really thinking about impacts.
Thank you. Alex, over to you.
I love this question. What does it mean to be human? Sam Altman, maybe a couple of months ago, tweeted, I am a stochastic parrot, and so are you. And the reference was to the paper written by Emily Bender, Tony Jabrou, Meg Mitchell, Margaret Mitchell, excuse me, Margaret Smitchell, and Angie McMillan-Major, as well as a number of people at Google, former colleagues of mine. And so which is on the dangers of stochastic parrots, basically arguing amongst many things that, large language models aren't sentient, they don't actually understand. Emily makes this point. She's also a co-author of mine and co-host of the Mystery AI Hype Theater 3000 podcast. And Emily makes this point with Alexander Kohler in another paper, which is called Towards Natural Language Understanding. And when Altman is saying that, he's effectively saying that, okay, it doesn't matter if we're stochastic parrots, that's fine. If our brains are just very complicated AI machines, then that's sufficient. Our brains just work like big text predictors, effectively. And so this argument really isn't new. Joseph Weizenbaum, computer scientist, MIT professor, writing in 1973, wrote a book called Computer Power and Human Reason. In Computer Power and Human Reason, Weizenbaum really militates against this idea of machines as, say, thinking. He's saying that and this is, and it's taken, has anybody ever used the Eliza chatbot? There might be some people in here. Yeah, and so So Eliza was a very old chatbot. ChatGPT's great-grandmother, I don't know how to gender that. I don't want to gender that, actually, because reasons. And Eliza, was this Rogerian psychotherapist that would just repeat kinds of things within it and say, you'd say, I'm feeling bad, and say, why do you feel bad? I'm having an argument with my mother. Tell me more about your mother. It would mostly just pick out things and parrot them back. And people were very taken with it. Even psychologists were taken with it. Weizenbaum had a visceral reaction to this, effectively saying that much of what was being done in AI systems really were devaluing what it meant to be human, that we should push against computing, against what it means to be computable and quantifiable and rationalizable. And The way that I think so much of that seems to happen, especially in our current moment, is that not only are so many elements of our life seen as computabilizable, quantifiable, and rationalizable, that we're ceding a little bit of that humanity. We're ceding that, and that's okay to some people. That's okay to Altman. That's okay to Suitskever. That's okay to OpenAI folks. And if it's a matter of money, if it's a matter of money versus it's a matter of ideology, to us, they're functionally indistinguishable, right? It doesn't actually matter. So when getting to your question, Mia, how do we push back? We have to think about what does it mean to actually separate the work that we do away from work that has those automizable types of dimensions, right? What are those things that are automizable, or what are those things that should be desirably automizable? Or if there's elements of coding that, I need to remember this sort of idiom. Please tell me ChatGPT, or please tell me Copilot. What is sort of that? Okay, that's an idiom. I've used Copilot. I have an idiom in working code of that I didn't know. I also don't know if it has a major security flaw. This is a very internal piece of code. It's not running on a production level system, which would be terrifying, and I wouldn't admit in public. But yes, I would. But at the same time, thinking about what actually gets seeded to these things, I think a lot about how what gets seeded is an imaginary of work, certain kinds of work that are seen as devalued. And we know that certain kinds of work are functionally devalued. We know that women's work is devalued, right? We know that historically, as Mia pointed out, the original computers were women, right? And the contributions of women have gone unheeded. Great books out there. I encourage you to read Janet Abate's Recoding Gender and Nathan Ensmeger's The Computer Boys Take Over. Okay, these are two foundational books I think anybody should read. These books are about thinking about what is even considered to be high status work. And we know from feminists, we know that what is considered to be actionable work or work that is deserving of pay, that has historically been men's work. Engineering, engineer itself as a word, as a computer word, that was because they wanted to attract more men to the profession at a time when programming was women's work, right? And so what gets to be automizable and what isn't should be a critical way that we push back against this. And I would argue that much of the work that gets to be automized is not going to necessarily replace work, but will be something that is lorded over our heads to say, this could be automizable, and we're going to do this to you. And because we're going to do this to you, your job may be more precarious, or you're going to be replaced by these tools. There's the old programmer joke, I can replace you with a very small shell script, right? Yeah, like Hannah's giving me like a eyebrow, like that was like a think. Yeah, it's a ThinkGeek t-shirt back in when ThinkGeek was still a site. And so yeah, sorry, really feeling old here. And so thinking about what it means to have work that is valued and seen as contributing, I think that's really a way that we can push back. What does it mean to honor work? What does it mean to hold certain kinds of work as valuable? I think that's one of the things that we can really push back on.
Incredible. Thank you so much. And I've been, poor Dwight in the back, he's been, okay, time out, okay, it's time. But I could listen to both of you all day long, and I think all of you could, but it's a Friday evening, and we do have to move along. So I'll just close with this, that thank you both so much for taking the time, sharing your expertise. And I feel like the biggest takeaway, at least for me, is that we need to reclaim this space. I feel for far too long, we have just been seceding the space to men, and they are getting to call the shots and deciding what kind of world we should live in. And I think its time is now to take that space back, And this is why we are here, and which is why our work exists, and which is why so many amazing women are leading this space. So this is just a sliver of what you can expect when you join our community. Just shameless pitch here that become part of a community, and this is the kind of amazing insights and diverse perspectives that you'll get to hear from leaders in this space. So again, thank you so much again
Thank
for
you.
joining us, and thank you all.
Nice to see you.
Great job.
So we move to the next chapter. I will speed up the next part, and we are going to be announcing, very excited, the 100 list. And so just hang in there 5 minutes, and we'll get started. Thank you both so much again.
Thanks, Mia.